Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. One of the most insidious aspects of alcohol and drugs is the cycle of addiction. The cycle of addiction is a recognized pattern in usage of alcohol and drugs that leads the user back to using repeatedly over and over again, regardless of the negative consequences. And sometimes seems like because of those negative consequences. And in This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, she walks through the cycle of addiction, and I want to hit some of the high points. This book is primarily about alcohol, so it'll be referred to a lot during what she says. But as the first paragraph I read will indicate, addictions really follow very similar cycles. There can be some subtle differences. Sometimes there can be some differences based on the physical addictive properties of any particular drug. But the cycle, it looks very similar in all of them. Addictions vary from substance to substance, but the patterns are the same. The addict is conditioned to believe the substance will provide enjoyment or relief, that it will help them enjoy life more or ease their stress. The addict generally believes they are somehow incomplete and need something more than what their body can naturally provide. They may believe there is something missing inside them, an empty space that can be filled with their substance of choice. Those beliefs are not generally conscious. So it's really important to recognize that if you look back at your first alcohol or drug use, for example, one of the reasons that I first started to really use alcohol was because I felt like it helped me engage in social situations. And even though there was some conscious aspect to it, a lot of it did rest in that unconscious belief that I just by myself wasn't enough to get people to like me, at least not the people I wanted to like me. That I really needed to be drinking, to be getting drunk, and to be partying in order to get these people to like me. So there was something that I felt was missing that I needed to fill with alcohol and drugs. Addicts usually take time to acclimate to the experience of using the drug. And then I'm going to skip down and talk a little bit about the craving. Once we do start to take in a physically addictive substance, we start to develop a craving, and that phenomenon of craving is what really sets the addict and alcoholic apart from people who don't experience this kind of cycle. And so she goes on to say, since we don't suffer the craving when we are taking the drug, we don't connect the feeling with the drug. We don't connect the craving with the drug. The craving of something being amiss is similar to, or the feeling of something being amiss is similar to stress or hunger, so we can't pinpoint it. When we drink another drink, we feel better. We have a drink and feel more relaxed, confident, and in control than we did just moments before. Since the relief is real, we start to believe the drink provides enjoyment. We are happier when we take a drink, not because drinking makes us happy, but because the drink relieves the withdrawal that drinking caused. This illusion confirms what we've been unconsciously conditioned to believe, that alcohol provides relief or pleasure. So we've talked about this in other videos about this book, that alcohol creates an illusion of happiness. Drugs create an illusion of happiness. They don't actually give us happiness. And that illusion actually comes from the deadening of things like fear, things like anxiety, and these feelings of relaxation are actually just the deadening of emotions that are often caused by repeated use of alcohol or drugs in the first place. So when we feel anxious, when we feel uptight, a lot of times those emotions are caused by the lack of alcohol or drugs, And we then use alcohol or drugs to deaden those emotions, and it makes us feel like the alcohol or drugs are actually making us happy, when all they're doing is deadening emotions they caused in the first place. So she goes on to say, since addictive substances create the vulnerability to begin with, they cannot help us relax. They're the reason we feel tense, weak, and insecure. So as we continue to drink, the immunity grows, and eventually you are unhappy even when you're drinking. So you start to build up an immunity to the ability of these drugs, the alcohol, to help you relax, and you start to be unhappy even when you're drinking. And this is when I remember the really bad parts of my addiction and my alcoholism starting, was when I would use in order to make myself relaxed and happy, and I couldn't even get to that point. And I would drink, and I would be waiting for when I would feel the relaxation, when I would get happy, and it never came. Sometimes I would drink in order to relieve physical withdrawal symptoms, and that never happened. And I remember drinking through these just miserable days because I felt terrible both physically and mentally, and I thought maybe if I have just one more drink, it'll help me get over the hump. Maybe if I have just one more drink, I'll be able to, I'll start to feel better. And it just never came. And it was just, those were the moments where I started feeling like, okay, maybe this is not what I thought it was, where I'm just drinking to be happy. Maybe this is something more. And that takes us to the next stage, which is the stage where we're starting to realize our dependence. And she says, as the cycle continues, the feeling of dependence becomes greater, and we begin to believe alcohol is the most important thing in our lives. Just as bad food would taste amazing if we were starving, our perception of booze is altered. Alcohol seems more valuable. Our loved ones see us slipping. By the time they say something, we become so afraid of losing what now looks like our only solace that we unknowingly and unconsciously close our minds to what they are saying. Eventually, our tolerance is high, and we are drinking so much that much of our mental and physical health has been stolen. The illusion of gratification is practically non-existent. So we've gotten to that point where we know alcohol and drugs are not making us happy. We start to listen to family and friends, or pay attention to the small, cautionary voice inside our heads. We wonder if we should cut back or quit. Yet we've been unconsciously conditioned to believe cutting back or quitting is difficult, so we sadly begin to prepare for an uphill battle. We try to abstain, but our unconscious mind still believes we are getting something positive from alcohol. Because of this, we are tormented when we try to quit. This describes so well the feeling that I had when I would try to cut back, when I would try to drink moderately. I remember going home at nights and saying, okay, I'm just going to have 3 beers tonight. I'm going to have 1 beer before dinner, 1 beer during dinner, and 1 beer after dinner. And I remember how impossible that task became for me, because I would drink the first beer and finish it before dinner. And I could not fathom the idea of not opening another beer before dinner started, of waiting to open another beer. I could not get my mind to compute that, no matter what. And this is kind of like what I said yesterday. If you're watching this and that you don't understand that concept, that seems weird to you, then you probably don't have a problem with alcohol or drugs. But for me, the idea of going even a few minutes without a beer in the evening was so uncomfortable that I had to really work to abstain during that time. and it became a source of stress and a source of anxiety. And so then that helped to bolster the unconscious belief that when I did finally allow myself to take that drink and it provided me relief from the anxiety and stress that drinking itself caused in the first place, that helps to bolster that unconscious belief that alcohol is still giving me something, still providing me something. And that belief makes it harder to quit. And so that's how the cycle goes. It just keeps feeding on itself. The more you try to abstain, the harder it is for you to quit. And because the more relief you finally get when you succumb and when you take a drink. So I think that she does a really good job of explaining the alcohol cycle, explaining the drug cycle, and just the cycle of addiction in general. And she continues to talk about this a little bit in tomorrow's reading. And we'll talk a little bit more about what does it take to get out of that cycle. And some people seem to snap out of it pretty easily. Some of us need a lot more help. So what does it really take to get out of that cycle? And then, of course, the important aspect of how do we maintain our entropy out of that cycle after we've left it and make sure we don't enter back into it again. So more on that tomorrow and in the coming days. In the meantime, have a good one.